Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another awesome episode of the BIF Bites podcast. I'm your host, Jerry Me, and joined as always by my faithful co-host, Mr. Adam Shear. How's it going, Adam?
Great. Feeling very heroic today.
Very heroic. Whoa, okay. I like that. I like that. Excellent. Well, we are on the hero's journey today with a great guest. We have Nate Astley on, and I'm sorry, it is Astley, or am I mispronouncing that? Am I just butchering
Yeah,
that?
no worries. It's Nate Astle.
Astle. My apologies. My
No worries.
should have covered that before the episode started, but we do it live here.
No, that's okay. And if it's like Rick Astley, like that's I get it.
I'm just trying to, fit Rick in wherever we are. He's never far from my heart. Well, Nate, it is great to have you on because we're going to dive into, once again, another very popular topic in the financial advising world. It's gaining a lot of steam. It's already very popular, and I feel it's really just at kind of the base of its momentum, and that is financial therapy. You are actually a financial therapist. That is your job title on your little business card, right?
That is, yeah.
Excellent. Well, you want to just kind of let our listeners know, what's the difference between a financial therapist and a financial advisor, or a financial therapist and just a regular therapist?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, a financial therapist is someone who helps people with the psychological and emotional aspects of money. As part of that also includes relational aspects, so couples or families, things like that. My background is I'm a couples and family therapist. I got my master's degree in that, and that's my home discipline. But I've been kind of always worked with money stuff. It's a huge stressor in our lives. Who'd have thunk? And we don't talk about money hardly at all. And when we do talk about it, a lot of times we tend to focus on numbers. Tend to focus on these concrete or more, quote, objective pieces. But money is an incredibly emotional experience. It's inherently emotional. We're not able to get away from the fact that we have feelings about where our dollars and cents go. And so what a financial therapist does is someone who can explore that with you, just like a regular therapist would, explore your beliefs, your feelings, your thought patterns, your behaviors, and hopefully get you to where you're not only doing money differently, like whether it's saving more or spending less or whatever, but you're feeling different about it as well. And I think that's pretty unique to financial therapy.
Yeah, I can definitely see it. So, the therapist side came first, and then you incorporated in the money side just because it is such a common struggle for so many different people out there.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, I can speak to that, firsthand. Me and my fiance, we almost never fight, but we are right now looking at buying a house, and I can say there are definitely far more stressors in our relationship right now. We're having some more tiffs that we, would never have if it wasn't for this massive financial burden looming over our heads.
And that's what I came here for. Actually, this is more of an intervention with you, Jerry.
Sorry, Jerry.
I've been bamboozled.
And we want to welcome Jerry's fiance onto the podcast.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
She is in the other room. She's home from work today, so you can bring her right on.
Nate, this is live demo opportunity for you.
Yeah. Excellent. So, I guess what in your experience, what are just the most common friction points when it comes to money? I mean, I mentioned buying a house, that's kind of obvious, but is that the most common thing that your clients are coming to you, or is there a common thing, or is it all just everyone's their own kind of unique snowflake type deal?
A lot of times, clients. So I kind of specialize in couples with financial conflict or where there's financial trauma, which is another fun thing to discuss. But a lot of times with couples specifically, they come in because of maybe one big disagreement, whether it's about a house or someone bought something and it was a significant amount of money, and maybe there was some financial infidelity involved, or they didn't tell their partner, or like it was a significant thing that they disagreed on and they went through with it anyway. But the problem is sometimes we focus on those big disagreements that we forget about all the little things that led up to it. All of us have a different way of thinking and feeling about money. All of us have different experiences about money, and just inherently built into any relationship is that natural kind of friction. And what happens oftentimes is that natural friction goes undiagnosed, untalked about. Like we don't work on that little stuff, and then when something big does come up, that's when the big blow up happens. And it's not like like, oh, it's buying in a house every time. I actually feel like the most common things that bring people in is those little disagreements around money, or these little ruptures that happen in our relationship. And then the thing that gets them to call me is the big thing.
It's kind of like the straw that breaks the camel's back, and it's building and building and building, and big kind of domino chain reaction. Do you feel this is something that kind of all couples have, and it's some people just kind of cross that threshold, or do you think, some people, their relationship just doesn't have a healthy relationship with money, and you kind of need to build it up from the foundation?
Classic therapy answer. It depends.
It depends. Good.
So I think we have, okay, well, if we think of it like risk factors and protective factors, okay. So some risk factors that might increase your likelihood of significant financial conflict. So financial trauma, where one or both members of the relationship have had, really intense stuff go on with money. It can be stuff like poverty. It can be stuff like losing a job. It can be stuff like my parent lost a job when I was growing up, and that really affected how I experienced life for a time. It can be things like my parents fought a lot about money, and I just had this really negative experience anytime money was brought up. So those what we call like big emotional experiences around money. That is a risk factor, because what it does is anytime money is brought up in the couple relationship, which is going to happen, it puts us on edge, and we're in our fight and flight responses, and we're getting triggered by past events. Other things that might be a little obvious, like if there's communication challenges in the relationship, if we struggle to talk about hard things, if it's hard for us to identify and express our emotions, all of those things are going to be risk factors. But there's also protective factors. If we can, maybe one of us has some pretty significant financial trauma, but we're really good at talking about stuff, and we're good at coming together as a team, that might prevent some of the bigger stuff from blowing up.
Yeah, and I mean it's also kind of not something you can head off. I don't know about you guys, but when I was in the dating world, it's not like I was sitting down and going, it's like, okay, show me your finances. These topics usually don't come up until you're already in a very serious relationship. You're talking about moving in together. So you might not even know. It's like, oh, my partner has $100,000 in credit card debt that I didn't know about while we were dating. But when we start filling out apartment applications, all of a sudden this stuff starts coming up.
I kind of feel like there's probably room to talk about it earlier than we do. I find that there's a whole lot of fun parallels between money and sex.
Okay.
So, if we're in a dating relationship, and we are, we're getting close and we're going to be physically intimate or whatever, like it's probably important to have discussions beforehand of like, are there traumas, are there things that I need to be aware of before we engage in this as a couple? It's the same thing with money. Like, we probably should be talking about money more often. It doesn't mean we're talking about all of our statements on the first date, but as the relationship naturally progresses, I think there's financial intimacy that can be explored as well. So it might be awkward, and for sure, money is a taboo, but it's a good thing to talk about money. It doesn't have to be like a big sit down talk necessarily, but we can say, hey, this is safe to talk about in our relationship. We get to build that rule.
Yeah, that's a good point. We've actually had this conversation with other guests in the past. We did a grief specialist that we interviewed, and they talked about the taboo things to talk about in life are death and money, and once again it's coming up again. It's a taboo topic, and it's hard for couples, even couples who are intimate with each other and know everything about each other. Even they struggle to talk about money with each other.
Right. Yeah, it's super normal.
Do you have any, we'll call it best practices, right, for people that are looking to build a life together, that are kind of en route to getting married, let's say? Is there anything that you'd say, hey, these are just good things to do kind of before that's official, or like around this time? I mean, aside from just like let's open up the conversation, are there any specific actions that you'd recommend generally?
Oh, let me get some free advice here. So, I recently engaged shopping for a house. What advice would you give to me?
Yeah, good question. And again, we have Jared's fiance
Let me
right
call
here.
Sam in here. Let me call Sam in here.
No, I think so. General best practices is when we say we want to talk about it more, how you talk matters just as much as what you talk about. This is also true. Like how you fight matters more than what you fight about. So when we're talking about money, things I would recommend every couple does is start with how do we want each other to feel? I want to feel like I'm on the same page with you. I want to feel like we're a team. I want to feel like you trust me and I trust you. I want to feel safe. When we start talking about what we want to experience emotionally in this money conversation, it starts us out on a like, oh, okay, this is a shared goal. Most of us want to feel these things. Most of us aren't saying, I want you to feel like crap. Like no one's that's not how we well,
if
maybe
if if you are, you're probably in the wrong relationship.
right. Um, and so starting conversations out like that, and then I find it really helpful to explore the why behind your feelings. Okay, if I'm buying a house and we're talking about it and we're like, well, I really want this thing, and you say, well, I don't care about that thing, I want this thing. um, let's start talking about why that's important to us. And I find it helpful to explore a little bit about, has there been anything in the past that's informing this? Is this just because it's a preference, or is this because, well, it's really important to me that we have an open style kitchen because that's how it was for me growing up, and I remember all these positive family experiences I had because we could all join together. I'm going to respond differently if I know your why than if it feels like you're just putting your heels down on something that I don't understand or care about. um, that requires some personal work. So I think other things to include in our couple relationships is, what's my money history like? Not just what's happened to me, but what happened to my parents, what happened to my grandparents, even.
Mm.
Like my beliefs about money is at least part, like, yeah, it's rooted in inside of me, it's rooted in my culture that I grew up in, but a large part of how I feel, think, and experience about money came from my parents and their parents, and like that intergenerational money stories. And you can go as deep as you want here, but start talking about it with your partner. I think it's interesting at the very least, but truthfully, I think it can be really helpful in preventing unnecessary arguments because we have a better understanding where our partners and where we're coming from.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I can definitely speak to that. I feel it's very difficult for my fiance because I'm a financial advisor. I'm very focused on money, and I'm very on board with the whole fire movement and financial independence, retire early, and all about like living very frugally. So I'm like, hey, babe, we can get a house in Wyoming for like $100,000 and save all this money. And she's just like, I don't want to live in Wyoming though.
It's fair.
Which is fair, but I tend to be very frugal, and she is more along the lines of, I would like to actually enjoy the life I live rather than, scraping by just to save a couple bucks here and there.
Yeah, and this is actually something that comes up quite a bit where when I'm working with a couple, maybe they're a financial advisor, or one person has more of a financial acumen, like
Mhm.
they get it more, they're exposed more. And again, back to the parallel with sex. If I was working, if and by the way, this is true, my wife is a sex researcher, and so like that's what she does.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean that I'm like, well, you know more about sex, so you get to make all of our sex decisions together. Like, no, you might know more, but like, kind of want to be part of the decision making. Um, just because maybe you, Jerry, and I'm picking on you a little bit, but like,
You feel free. I feel free.
yeah, like one person having more exposure doesn't mean that they are the default decision maker with money.
Mhm.
So like this is still a team thing. You both you both have your money histories, preferences, emotions, and no one's history, emotions, or preference are better. Like it's just something we have to come at as a team and like, okay, yeah, I prefer these things, you prefer these things. There's probably some compromise here, but the most important thing is we make decisions together because you'd likely make different decisions if it was just one of you, but you're not. You're a team, you're a duo. And so we have to make team decisions.
That's some great advice, and something to I will keep to heart going forward. So we've talked a lot about couples, that's your main focus with most of your clients. But what about other kind of money relationships, parents, siblings, speaking to, our past affecting our current. One of my earliest memories is my father and my aunt, his sister, got into a huge argument over money when I was younger, because when my grandparents were going into, hospice care, and how to pay for that hospice care was a huge stressor. And my dad and my aunt were estranged for, 10 years. They wouldn't talk to each other for 10 years, all because of money. So how about those types of relationships?
It's really complicated. I feel like when, again, this is another reason that's so important that we talk about money, because that hugely affected your dad and his relationship with his sister, but it also affected you. And, whether, I don't know how old you were when this happened, but like you probably kept on some level, some part of your brain saved this data, saved this information, said money is bad or scary or causes problems.
Yeah.
Um, or, maybe not exactly that simple, but there that left an imprint.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think with any family relationship, just like any couple relationship, there's a whole lot of factors. It's not just money. And that's also kind of the same thing with couple. We can't get so overworked of like, it's because we have a financial disagreement. The financial disagreement is probably part of it. It's probably the thing we talk about. But if I had to guess, there's probably other stuff underneath that I don't feel like heard from my sister, or I feel like my brother talks over me, or I feel like there's power imbalances, or there's grief that is coming into play here. Like those are the all other parts that we don't talk about, but
Mm-hmm.
is likely influencing the financial disagreement just as much, or if not more.
Yeah, definitely a perfect storm situation of, grief of parents, nearing end of life, also coupled with a Boston Irish household where talking was, as taboo as money. Push
Yeah.
all your emotions down. So definitely cause a perfect storm, and I think that's very relatable for a lot of families out there.
Yeah. And this is it's hard to do, especially when our brains are like swimming in stress and swimming in big feelings. So take a break if you need to. But what I encourage people when they're trying to do it, try and take this perfect storm, this amalgamation of all these bad factors, try and separate them out. How much of this is about the actual financial disagreement? How much of this is about grief? How much of this is about our brother sister relationship? How much of this is about financial stress I'm experiencing in my family, but doesn't really have to do with you? Like, if we can kind of break it out, it helps us sort our feelings too. Like, yes, I am frustrated, but what used to be this big ball of bad is now like a pie-sized, ball of bad, and I can direct my emotions, can communicate my emotions much better if I'm not overwhelmed by it, just a big thing. And it's like, okay, there's pieces, and they all need to get worked through, but the part I'm directing at you is the part that's appropriate to direct at you, and not all the other stuff that's in
Yeah,
between. Yeah.
definitely. Especially family business partners, because that was a piece of advice my dad gave to me out growing up, is never go into business with family because it gets too complicated. But it sounds like with your approach, if as long as you're open and honest about it, you can make it work, it sounds like.
I feel like there's very, and the financial advisors might not agree with me on this, but
Get out the pitchforks.
yeah, there's very few absolutes in
Mhm.
money in life. And I think, yeah, never go into business. Like, I get it. And my family probably wouldn't do it either, but it's less about the never and the always. And it's instead just be intentional. Peace. I don't want to say be smart about it, because even being smart doesn't prevent all things, but whatever you do money wise and in life, do it on purpose.
Mhm.
Do it with a plan, do it with forethought. Um, Pay attention to yourself, pay attention to your family, the systems around you. Um, you prevent a whole lot of hurt that way. Not all the hurt. Life is gonna life, but
Yep.
um, if you do things intentionally, I feel like it's a better way to live, honestly.
Yeah, we can definitely agree to that.
Uh, Something that came to mind. I really love all this. This is fantastic. It's fascinating to listen to. We get into that financial practice space. Um, it's becoming more commonplace in the financial publications, right? CFP board just adds this psychology of financial planning to the
Mhm.
actual exam. It's kind of moving to the forefront, right? But when we take that and we apply it to the real world, I'm speaking to and about the subset of planners that are trained deeply in the financial stuff, right? How do we incorporate this? Like just raising awareness of we might need to refer out to someone like Nate in just like we'd refer out to the estate planning attorney. Like
Mhm.
I sense and hear and see in the financial side something that might be neat. We might need to uncover something here or work toward healing on this front. Like what does that look like? When should I refer clients to you? Simply.
Yeah, that's a great question. It depends. But
Here's your check for $500.
right. Um, no, I think so. If you, as a financial advisor, are working with a client and there's some block, okay, whether it's that they don't understand something, or they're really struggling to stick to a plan, or I feel like most of the time, even if we don't know why, we notice when there's a block. I think one thing that's very important that financial advisors do is do your own work. What I mean by that is, if certain situations cause you to get really uncomfy, that's not necessarily bad. Like, you're a human being, but you can do harm to your clients if you're not aware of your own stuff. So, and this is true for therapists, is like, we need to look inside of us of what are the touchy areas for us, because if we're aware of what's happening inside of us, we're better able to be aware of what's going on for them. and also be able to talk about it when the time comes. Be like, hey, so it sounds like there's some kind of block here. It might be time to get additional help. I love the idea of like, just like we would get an estate attorney, or we would get, some other person as part of your team. Like, there's a lot of feelings which are super normal to have around money. Let's reach out. I think it's hard because on one end, I don't do things that you are like not able to do. I don't want you to put a hat on that you're not
That
comfortable in.
Yeah, that's what I was in. Is like, the CFP board is kind of pushing advisors to wear many hats. And I feel there's a very big difference between, hey, learn some extra tax codes so you can better help, calculate a client's AGI, with do, deep therapeutic counseling on someone's, deep rooted traumas. I feel that they're kind of equating those twos of the two different hats to wear, and they're two very different, levels of skill sets to acquire.
Yeah, no, it's super valid. And honestly, if I went into it's not a perfect analogy, but if I went to a surgeon's office and I was like, well, I watched a lot of CSI, I'm sure I can do this. Like, um, you're probably not gonna do the best work. But I think everyone having some basic CPR skills is probably not a bad idea.
That's
Um,
a good analogy. Yeah.
Yeah.
when it comes to like therapy, like if you're asking clients like, tell me about your mother, that's my Freud impression, by the way. You're probably overstepping your bounds, but I think basic skills in validation, basic reflective listening skills. I mean, that's 80% of what therapists do.
Mhm.
Um, is we are, again, like speaking for all therapists, like we don't have our own stuff we need to work through, but um, like being able to be present with a client, being able to be aware of our own stuff, be aware to be kind and compassionate, be able to ask questions that are intentional. Like, you don't need to be a therapist to do that. Like, you can do this as a friend, you can do this as a professional. Um, you don't need to be an expert on psychology and therapy to be a decent human being that's present and
Mhm.
validating. And you probably shouldn't pretend that you know how to process, big feelings or big traumas if that's not part of your skill set, which is okay. Like, most clients don't need you to be an expert in everything. It's okay to get additional support as part of your team.
Nice. Now, kind of going in that same vein, are there certain, thought exercises that you recommend, or, best practices for clients? What are some things that you can, share with our financial advisor listeners, of things that they can kind of start incorporating, where they can, you know, do it in a correct way without, overstepping their skill sets?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few assessments already out there. You probably heard of them, Klon's money script inventory. And you can do what we call a money timeline, where the client just thinks back about highs and lows in their financial life. These are good conversation starters. I think of them like that. No assessment should be the rule of like, this is what my clients are. And I think sometimes, because we find comfort in assessments, we find comfort in feeling like, okay, this is like, I'm doing the thing. And humans are very complex, and we're, as many boxes as we create, no one is going to fit into them perfectly. So uh I think it's a good idea to do Klon's money script inventory with your clients to start the insight process if they've never thought about this before. One thing I do is I give the money script inventory to clients, and I'll ask them, why do you think you got the scores that you did? Um, and that's pretty open ended. They can go as deep as they want to go, and so that's a great start. Asking them about their money history. The money timeline, I think, is also a really good one. Um, I find it helpful, and again, plan or be aware of how deep you want to go, but just start asking questions about how does it feel to be talking to me right now? Like we're gonna be talking about numbers today. How does that feel? Like that's I feel like that's kind and
I,
I guess therapeutic, but you don't have to be a therapist to ask that.
I'm glad you bring that up because that's actually something I've noticed is becoming more and more prevalent is setting that baseline expectation. And this is across kind of all spheres of, just figuring out when you're having a, important conversation, just setting the guideline like, hey, what level are you at coming into this? Because I might be coming in at 100 and you might be coming in at 20. And if I just do that, you're gonna close up and
Mhm.
not be very willing. Whereas if I just ask you straight up and you say, hey, I'm at like a 20 today, I'm like, okay, let's ease into this a little bit better.
Right. And then you can ask him, you say, uh, okay, you're at a 20. That's totally fine and understandable. Is there anything that you think I can do that would help you get to a 30?
Mm-hmm.
Um, like, is there something small? Do we need to take a deep breath? I'll make sure that I'm going extra slow today, make checking for understanding and comprehension, which you should be doing anyway. Like you can meet people where they are without having to be an expert at every point, if that makes sense. Like I can just be there with you and be what you need today. I know we need to talk about numbers and we talked about building your estate plan, whatever it is. And uh but like yeah, just want to check in. I'm going to check in a couple of times during our meeting. If there's comprehension issues or if anything's feeling overwhelming, let's go get you a glass of water. I have a, I have a little bit of snacks here. Like I'm actually a huge fan of offering little things that involve our senses. It
Mm-hmm.
can be very grounding for clients where this is hard. So little things like that can go a long way.
Yeah, definitely. And that I think is probably the best advice you've given that our listeners can take away is, because in my experience in this industry, I've worked with many advisors, especially the, more advisors with more experience, 10, 20, 30 years in the industry. They tend to sit down with a client and just steamroll right into it. It's like, this is what we got to do. This is what the numbers are. Here's your packet. Here's your financial plan, yada, yada, yada. Any questions about the pure technical aspect of it? Okay, nice. Have a good day. Push them out the office. And if advisors can start taking that step back and just checking in with the client from the get-go, I think you'll have much better client relationships.
Right. Right. Which honestly equates to better business. Like,
Yes, and
Yeah.
that's the end goal really is, better serve your clients so that they're happy, give you recommendations and referrals.
So if let's just say I'm looking to be more in tune with this side of myself, as you mentioned, so I can then better serve my clients and just walk the talk. And do I need to seek out a therapist who's a specialist in that area, or is this something that you think just a clinician generally would be able to help process? Just exploring kind of my own money biases or past, like just in your opinion, how would that
yeah.
look?
I do think you tend to get better work out of someone who's done this before,
Hmm.
but I honestly don't even think not every financial advisor, well, do I believe that? Hold on. I was like, not every financial advisor needs to see a therapist. I'm like, honestly, every human ever needs to see a therapist. Um, but even just like basic stuff. So something that I do with my clients that I think is free, Google a feelings wheel. Um, feelings wheel is one of my favorite little activities. It's a wheel and it has feelings words on it. But the goal of the activity is to be more specific about the emotional experience. So you start in the center and it's like happy, sad, angry.
I
And it will
just
go to
I just Googled feelings wheel and I did not know there were this many different feelings. There's a
I
lot of
know,
feelings on
right?
this feelings wheel.
It's
There's like hundreds of feelings here. Am I emotionally shallow?
It's like discovering like I've had cheddar cheese my whole life, and then you're like, oh my gosh, and there's brie, and there's Gouda, and there's all this thing, and you're like, welcome to the world of Geez, like our emotions are a rich tapestry, and this is my like artist coming out. So yeah, start with the words that you're very comfortable using, and then see if like, okay, I know I'm feeling sad right now. Let me see if I go out to level two and see if, well, is it disappointment? Is it guilty? Is it whatever it is, it adds flavor, adds context, and adds it's better communication. Do this with your partners, do this with your clients, um, and start using this. So that's a really good point, starting point. Other skills that I think anyone can use, even if you don't see a clinician, is what we call the speaker listener technique. It's essentially a talking stick, like the thing you did in kindergarten.
Yep.
There's a reason it works. um, and if we start with our clients being able to reflect back what we hear. Okay, so I'm hearing you say this. Am I right? What else would you add? Like really tiny nudges like that can go a huge way to feeling like you understand your client, but so that your client feels understood. And when I feel understood, I'm a much better listener. I'm also much more likely to be on board with what you're saying because I feel like you get me. So speaker, listener, and feelings wheel. And then if you're like I'm coming up against some real stuff and I need to see someone, check out the Financial Therapy Association, has a directory of financial therapists that you can see. And we'd be happy to do that work with you as well.
That actually isn't is there any special like designations to be a financial therapist? So like can someone who's a CFP just say, you know what, I really like financial therapy. I'm going to try my hand at it. I'm going to just start offering financial therapy as a service. Are they going to get in trouble? Do they need to get a license? Like what's that look like?
Yeah, it's not licensed, but there are trainings. So the certified financial therapist designation is put out by the Financial Therapy Association. That is kind of the big certification in it right now. It, just like anyone can call themselves a financial planner, if you call yourself a certified financial planner, that's different. But it's not regulated.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean you can't be unethical because you can, but I think it's one of those things that like even I am for protecting the public against like someone calling themselves a financial advisor when they don't have their series of they don't have their experience, right?
They've got a
Like
TikTok channel where they recommend cryptocurrencies, and now they're a financial planner for doing some
right.
bunny ear quotes for our listeners at home.
Yeah. I'm for protecting the public, and I generally am for like regulating fields where we can do harm, which I think therapy and financial planning we can do harm. So it's important that we have standards here. It's also important to remember that even in regulated fields, like I've been as someone who is a therapist who's done a lot of therapy in his life, I've had relationships with my therapists that have been awesome, and I've had really crappy ones too. So yes, anyone can call themselves a financial therapist right now. But if you do that and you don't have these skills and you're not clear about your expertise, you can do harm. And it's more of a reflection on you than I think the field. So anyway, that was maybe harsh, but that is what I think.
Hey, tough love. Sometimes you
Yeah.
need some tough love.
Yeah.
They say money can't buy happiness. Agree or disagree?
Um, I think it's nuanced. It depends. Um, there's some recent when you sent me that question beforehand, there was a recent study. I don't remember. I don't I can't say like, oh, it's recent. It was very recent. But it's less about money can buy unhappiness and it's more about money can prevent unhappiness.
Mm-hmm.
So having money doesn't inherently make me experience joy more often. Um, but it can prevent me from experiencing pain in financial distress, which like that makes sense. if I'm always stressing about how am I going to make my ends meet and pay for this bill and get like, I'm going to be experiencing a lot of unhappiness. And that unhappiness is going to get in the way of experiencing happiness. Um, but it's not like, oh, well, billionaires are the happiest people. Like, that's just not true.
Mhm.
And we've all heard the like 70,000 a year is the threshold, and then it's not correlated anymore. I think the with inflation and things, it's probably more like 100 now. But uh, yeah, no, it doesn't buy unhappiness, but it can sure help with unhappiness.
Yep. I always like the joke with that of, money can't buy happiness, but it can buy a jet ski, and no one's been sad on a jet ski.
You know, I'll give it a try next time I'm on a jet ski.
Yeah, just next time you're feeling down, just hop on a jet ski.
Okay. Did you just solve therapy? Am I no
I,
longer
I think
needed?
so. We're calling it jet ski therapy.
Good to know.
I think this working group needs to send an edit to Sir Paul McCartney,
Yeah.
and say, well, can't buy me love, money can't buy me love, but it
Mhm.
can dot 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 dot.
It can buy you a jet ski.
It can
Right.
buy you a jet ski.
A decent amount of money can buy. Yeah.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Adam, did you have any other comments before we get into our bonus question? I've hidden a little bonus question in here. I'm excited to get into.
No, but I just wanted to say thank you to Nate. I've really enjoyed listening to all this. I find it really fascinating, and I I'm interested to just see how financial planners that were trained on the financial path find their way into this newer territory. I think it's an exciting time, and uh, it's just fantastic that good work can be done to help people even more, beyond the parameters of a financial plan and numbers, that it can actually contribute to deeper wellness. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for sharing everything with us today.
Yeah, if I can just kind of leave a final thought on that.
Yeah.
The the end goal has to be wellness. Um, Making more money, keeping more money, being smarter with your money is great, but the end goal has to be a better life for people. We have to approach our field, financial planning at least, like as a helping profession, like nurses, like doctors, like teachers, where our main goal is to help people. Um, Making money is morally neutral, in my opinion. Like it, it doesn't mean you like, yes, you want to be smart, of course, there's financial reality, but we have to help people. Like that's I hope that more people get into financial planning because they want to help people. And there's a whole lot of ways to do it. I think, some basic exposure to financial therapy ideas is a great idea. There's also lots of ways you can collaborate. We can refer out, like we talked about earlier. One thing that I've started recently that I hope more people do is I have a collaborative practice. So I'm a financial therapist, but in-house, I also have a financial counselor and a financial planner. And we approach things like a treatment team, kind of like if at a eating disordered or a disordered eating clinic, you might have a therapist and a dietitian and a doctor or something, and we're all working together for the outcome. You can work with financial therapists in your business as well, and I hope that's something we move towards is
Yeah.
uh, like we can be a team here, and we don't need to be as territorial as
That
we might be right now.
that's really interesting, and I think that's kind of a great effect as well of the industry moving away from kind of commission based and more towards fee based office hours type things. It does open up those relationships a lot better where you can, partner in that more kind of like clinical setting that we've seen, the medical field really excel at.
Mhm. Yeah, there's lots of opportunity, and I would love to see financial planning in a very seen differently, both
Mhm.
from inside the industry and the public, in 10 or 20 years. I would love to see that change.
Yeah. Great. And then also, would you like to kind of just plug your stuff if our listeners want to kind of find more about you, or maybe they want to, engage in your services? Where can they find you?
Sure, yeah. So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So just Nathan Astle, uh, not the famous cricket player.
Not Astley.
Yeah, also not Rick. Not man. No. So LinkedIn. My website is the Financial Therapy Clinical Institute .com, but any Google search will hopefully get that. And my other practice is called Relational Money. Um, if so, we do accept clients if that's something that you are looking for or your client might be needing. But the other thing is I offer trainings for financial planners and
Yeah.
therapists. They're on-demand trainings or video recordings. They have role plays and they have worksheets that you can use. And in the effort of making them affordable, they're only $60
Wow.
per course.
That's
So
less than my continuing education for the CFP on I just took
yeah,
one on counseling divorced clients, and that probably would have gone a lot better taking one of your courses.
well, I'm working on getting approved for CEs actually through the CFP board.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I want this to be accessible. Yeah, and each training is about 2.5 hours ish. I got one on financial trauma, one on couples and money, and one on family financial therapy. And then I've got two more in the works. So, but you can find those on the website. It's financial therapy, and then there's a tab that's for professionals, and you can navigate there. But yeah, reach out. I'm an open book. I'm happy to help where I can.
Yeah, well, definitely let us know when you get that CE approval, because I will certainly look to take some of your courses to get those CE credits under our belts.
Awesome.
Excellent. All right, I got a bonus question for you.
Okay.
A little bird has told me that you are a huge Lord of the Rings fan. So I
Yes.
just wanted to know. I just wanted to know who is your favorite Lord of the Rings character, and why is it Samwise Gamgee?
uh, so Tolkien actually said that Sam was the real hero of
Yes,
Lord
yes,
of
he
the
did.
Rings. Um, if you think about it, Sam is the only time that gave up the ring of his own volition after Frodo is trapped in Mordor and Sam goes to rescue him. Sorry, spoilers if you haven't seen the 20-year-old movie.
An
Um,
80-year-old spoiler.
yeah, like given, yeah, but Sam gives the ring of it. So I think there's character there.
Mhm.
And obviously, he hasn't been dealing with the ring as long as Frodo. And even though Frodo's seen as kind of the main character because he's the one that's on the quest. Anyway, sorry, this is you're gonna unlock some deep nerdy stuff. Um, I'm about to pull out like a genealogy map of like, okay, so like Sam is the son of the gaffer, and he's been working. But anyway, um,
I'm glad. I didn't mean to force my own personal beliefs onto you, but I am glad that you actually did choose Sam anyways.
I I love it. I feel like my so if it's not in the movies, there's a character called Tom Bombadil. Okay.
Oh yes, good old Tom.
And he at some point early in the Fellowship of the Ring book, he helps the hobbits get out of the Shire. So he's actually my favorite character, and it's
Oh.
because it is heavily implied that that's Tolkien writing himself into the story.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom Bombadil is just a really chill dude. He's kind of someone that you imagine is constantly on mushrooms, like, or
for
just like always having the devil's leaf. But like why I say that, sorry, I don't. The reason I like that so much is he's very like nature and he's very a peace loving guy. And when you hear Tolkien and you read his diaries and his journals and like he has seen some crap in his life. Like he was in World War I. He's the actual Tolkien lived a really intense life.
Yeah.
And he wrote himself into Tom Bombadil because he's like, I just want peace and I just want to like chill and like live in the forest and have no problem like that. That kind of is magical, and I romanticize that idea sometimes. Like I love being a financial therapist. I love what I do, and sometimes I kind of just want to live in the woods and not have any issues ever, and just let's just all. I think I just have an inner hippie that needs to be let out.
Yeah, I mean that is a good point. I mean, the Tom Bombadil, they tell him like, the world could be coming to an end, and his response was, "Oh, that kind of sucks. You guys want to have lunch?"
Yep.
Just
And that's
like the ultimate chill.
yes. Yes. And I love that. So that's my final answer.
Uh, See, I think
Great.
I'm going to introduce a Lord of the Rings test for my clients for financial therapy to gauge where they are on their development, because I feel depending on who your favorite Lord of the Rings character is says a lot about where you are in your own personal growth.
Mm,
I feel when you're really when I was really young, Legolas was my favorite character because
yeah.
he's the badass, he's the cool guy. He surfs on the shield going down the stairs, taking out. He's
Uh-huh.
awesome. And then you grow up a little bit, and you mature a little bit, and you're like, oh, Aragorn's actually my favorite because he's noble and kingly, and he always does the right thing. He's kind of like the Captain America, yeah,
Uh-huh.
type deal. And now that I'm in like my mid-30s, I'm like, who's got it going on? Sam. Sam is he's the best. He's just a dude doing the right thing, not asking anything for it. He's who I look up to. And I feel depending on where you are on that journey kind of shows a lot of who you relate to in the fellowship.
Tell me that we all don't want to live the Hobbit
Oh
lifestyle.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
5 meals a day, taking a nap in the garden. What could go wrong with that?
Fireplaces, reading,
Yeah.
drinking. I mean, yeah, that's the life. It's a dream. Don't
Yeah.
sleep on Gandalf the Grey though. I like Gandalf the Gray.
Not Gandalf the
Really
White,
appreciate.
specifically
No,
Gandalf
I
the
like the Gray. Yeah,
Gandalf
I
the
feel
White has
like
too many responsibilities.
he's just too. I don't know. He's too lofty. I feel like Gandalf the Grey has some of that down to earth element about him. I think he's like he brings people together, right? He's inspiring. He's big figure with a gentle soul.
Ooh, that is good.
He does
Yeah.
have some sweet fireworks too.
He does have awesome fireworks.
I, I am like biting my tongue right now on like Silmarillion lore, which of like, well, there's a reason, and he's the Meyer that worked at. Anyway, so
I got that
Um,
for I this is just a very short but funny little thing. I got Silmarillion for my nephew for Christmas, and my wife was like, "What is this book?" And I was like,
it's a
"He's gonna
fake history textbook.
love it. He's gonna go crazy for this." And my nephew opened it up, and everyone was dead silent except for him and I, and there was just like pure dorkdom
yeah.
about it. The whole rest of the family was clueless. They're like, "What'd you get?" He's like, "The Samarillion. This is amazing." And they're like, "Oh, okay."
It's
Uh,
a 1,000-page history textbook about stuff that never actually really happened.
I love it.
Oh, so good.
Oh, that is perfect. Well, thank you, listeners, for allowing us to indulge in some nerddom. Sorry if you've never read the books or seen the movies, but if you've never even seen the movies, I don't know what you're doing with your life. You guys got to get on that.
It's it's part of the cultural zeitgeist that you need to know.
It's definitely.
Yeah.
I think it's all three Lord of the Rings movies are in IMDb's list of like 250 best movies ever made. All three
Mhm.
Lord of the Rings are in the top 10. you know,
Yeah.
Oh wow.
not just on the list, they're in the all three are in the top 10. 1/3 of the 10 best movies ever made is Lord of the Rings. So get on that stuff, people.
11 Academy Award winnings in 2003. They like swept the whole board. So
Yeah.
if you need
So
a anyway.
Jerry, could this be
well,
a regular installment? I mean, would this hang with the people that we generally have on the podcast?
I even like I've incorporated things in the past. Like I think I wrote an article for the website on like the dwarven economy and like trying to relate, hedging to the Mines of Moria, just trying to figure out ways I can shoehorn Lord of the Rings into our curriculum. So, if I can get your green light on that, Adam, that'd be great.
Yeah,
I don't
let's do it.
say less.
Done. And this is, documented. So this was the moment that we took a hard left turn into fantasy.
We didn't even
CFP
talk about
prep.
money anymore.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on. It was a pleasure speaking to you. For all of our listeners, we hope you guys enjoyed it. And you learned a lot that you can incorporate with your clients. For our listeners sitting for the November exam, we're getting into the swing of things. When this episode comes up, Adam, I think we'll be just about to start our first classes.
Yeah, exciting time, and very excited to welcome a new group of CFP professionals into this helping profession.
Well, thank you so much, guys, and I hope you all have a great rest of your week.